Hey brawlers, I'm Mr. Hoodat, and I'm here to show you a game with Wonder Waddle where I was guided into going Dwarves. Dwarves are typically seen as bait by most top players, as they do not fare well against other compositions in the endgame. But in this game, I'll be showing you a unique way to navigate Dwarves to make up for their late game weaknesses. I hope you enjoy. On my first board, I'm given an interesting option between Cinderella and an early spell, or Chicken. Seeing as Cinderella has been indirectly nerfed with the recent Arthur change, and I'm Wonder Waddle, I chose the Chicken so that I can make use of my hero as soon as possible to get early game treasures. After rolling, I'm rewarded for my decision with a very early tier 2 treasure for next turn. My treasure choices aren't too interesting, but Spinning Wheel is alright this early on for some extra gold. After rolling, I'm shown a board of 2 Dwarves, and with a bit of thought, I decide it's worth cashing in on my Chicken now for early stats to ensure that we don't lose this next fight against Miri. For my next board, I decide on taking the Dwarf pair and rolling, as the rest of these minions aren't too interesting. After rolling, I take the Billy, as I don't see myself slaying with Cut Purse anytime soon, and I'm not in need of egg at this point. I want to continue taking animals to try to further buff our crafty, as well as grow in power with early treasures. My positioning is to ensure a potential baby dragon doesn't get to trade with any of my minions. My first level 3 board shows Princess White and a good tier 3 dwarf together, so at this point I'm pretty decided on forcing dwarves. I'll be looking to take any dwarf to upgrade Princess White, as well as strong tier 3 animals like stag or pig to get easy tier 3 treasures. Next shop gives me doubly and a free Cut Purse. I decide on taking the Candy Rain since it's effectively +2/+2 for my doubly. Rolling doesn't get me any more dwarves, but I do find the second Cut Purse for another treasure. I sell my weakest minion and decide for a while on which treasure is best in my position. Normally, I would take Ring of Regen, since it will net me around 8 to 10 HP throughout the game to help survive past top 4. Playing to preserve HP is typically a good strategy with dwarves, as my late game is destined to get outscaled. If your health total is high enough, you can survive to top 2 despite being worse than the 3rd and 4th place players. But I decided on Piggy Bank, as it will take us at least 4 turns of rolling to upgrade White, so it makes sense to bank gold and spend our rolls for tier 4 dwarves rather than tier 3 to search for Dwarven Forge. At this stage, I'm just looking to bank my gold, so the only gold I'll be spending is on the one shop that I'm shown. I take the gold reduced minion and wait for future turns. I don't lose the fight too badly, and my next shop is great for me. I take both bossies as well as the spell, which can potentially get me a buffed or upgraded unit from my opponent for a cheap price to pay. With 7 gold left, I'm unable to upgrade my White this turn, so I bank again, as there's not much I can roll into to improve my board, since I still want to scale my White. Next turn, I'll be focused on upgrading White and trying to find bossy triple to get my forge. My board strength is still quite good despite banking a lot, but I'll need to get stronger soon. With 17 gold in hand, I take the free Lucky as well as the Creeper pair, as hunting for treasure map is a great way to transition into the endgame with dwarves. I think for a while about whether I should spend all of my gold now or continue to wait, and the fact that I'm against a Loki tilted me towards trying to get as strong as possible this turn, as Loki's early to mid game is very good, and I'm likely to lose this fight badly with my current board. What made me think to save again was that I'm looking at 3 potential tier 3 treasures, so my chances for treasure map are fairly high. I wanted to have more gold for when I can start rolling for Nian to get a tier 7 treasure as soon as possible. With my first roll, I find the bossy triple, but not the forge. Gloves of Thieving has the most value out of the 3 treasures, and is also another out for me to transition out of dwarves later. I take the doubly pair, then continue to roll for more dwarves and find a third doubly, which also upgrades my white. Unfortunately, I find treasure map first, so if I take it, the white upgrade will break it for a tier 5 treasure, which is not what I wanted. I take the sting instead, and also found Deepstone Mine to replace my 2 tier 2 treasures. I roll into the creeper triple and freeze the board and hope with my 2 other tier 3 pairs I can find the treasure map again. With my last fight won, I take the creeper triple and celebrate with the treasure map replacing Sting. I think to cast the lightning spell, since I'm against Miri, who is likely to have wizards or Romeos in the backline. I decide to continue to roll for maybe XP, since I saw Loki was already plus 2 XP over me. I take Bossy to improve my board slightly, and cast Fireball, which has a higher chance of killing wizards than the Bolt, and is also cheaper. I don't want to take any triples at this point, as my out for the late game is still Nian plus map for a tier 7 treasure. This out is not as far-fetched as it seems. With 11 rolls next turn, I'm more likely to find Nian than I'm not, and with this comp, it's not like I want to take anything else on 5, as Angry is only a small improvement to my board. It's much better to utilize my gold for endgame scaling rather than slight improvements at this point. As I tie my fight with Miri, I now begin my hunt for Nians and welcome all this extra gold generated from Lucky and Thieving Gloves. After a few rolls, I find my first Sea Terror friend. Once again, nothing else is really worth taking right now. The best use of gold is going all in for this treasure. I should be stronger than most of the lobby still, and I really need a way to beat the players with plus XP who are already gathering their level 6 compositions. Pan's shadow falls, and I'm now at the turning point, where I'm starting to get outscaled. A few players have been on 6 for 2 turns now, and we're desperate for Nian. With more free gold from Thieving, Lucky, and a spell, I find my second Nian in the final shop, ready just in time to give me either Grail or Mirror Mirror to give me a good chance for first. In the mirror match with Horde Dragon, I tie and collect my tier 7 bounty. Mirror Mirror lets us transition into Medusas, Cupids, Apple Trees for a good late game comp. Excalibur allows us to slowly assemble a different composition, but Grail is the real deal and the ultimate treasure to take to transition into a full-fledged endgame composition. Before my Grail turn, I want to give some tips on how to utilize this treasure, as it's the most undervalued and poorly used treasure for a newer player. Grail is not useful for singling out a composition and focusing on only those units for that composition. Yes, I have all dwarves with a giant white, and Lordy plus Echowood are very good to finish out this comp, but a good statistic to look at is that the chances of finding 3 Lordies and 3 Echowoods after 100 rolls in the shop is less than 50%, and I'm also only rolling the shop on average 40 to 50 times, even with limited hesitation. The correct way to utilize Grail is to not focus on composition, but rather focus on treasures to carry your composition. After selling all of your minions, you have 11 slots to utilize, 7 on board and 4 in hand, which gives you the opportunity to hold 5 pairs of tier 6 units. The goal is to grab all tier 6s you see, pair all of those tier 6s, and then roll for triples. With the final 30 seconds, start to reorganize your comp after each roll. You will roll past triples and pairs accidentally. The key is to not hesitate despite doing that, because after 40 to 50 rolls, you should have a full-fledged endgame composition, with at least 2 or 3 level 6 treasures to carry you. Now, let's see how this Grail turns out.
Your footsteps on the stairs. If I listen hard enough, they're still there. And you think I know better by now, but I still drink until you're next to me again, baby. Yeah, yeah. And I still think that in the morning I'ma wake up next to you. Empty bed and empty spaces in my head. Yourself, your taste, your memory is all that's left to fill this empty, fill this empty. This empty. And your pictures on my phone help me to pretend that I'm not alone. And you think I know better by now, but I still drink until you're next to me again, baby. Yeah, yeah.
After 43 rolls and 150 gold spent, my dwarves have evolved into evil boys with 2 treasures. Despite this Grail being probably my weakest one ever due to shop lag, this comp is enough to win with, and I'm certainly the strongest of the lobby at this stage. I still have 3 pairs of tier 6s to find my 3rd treasure, and a board filled with strong tier 6 units. All I want now is to find a 3rd triple for plus 100 sword. I take Apple Tree here as it's the best in slot for slot 4 at the moment. With my first roll, I find the triple I needed and can now abuse plus 100 sword with summons. I find Pumpkin with 3 gold left and debate whether it's worth selling pairs for it, as I can still replace Achilles' Spear with a better treasure. I decide to be as strong as possible to deal as much damage to Horde Dragon before he can find a level 7 treasure of his own. Positioning is very key here, and something a lot of Pumpkin players mess up. It is important to spread out pumpkins than to keep them all in the back row. If your pumpkins are in slot 6 and 7, and slot 6 dies and fills the board, your next pumpkin will die way before all of those units get utilized. Slot 5 is a much more useful positioning for a second pumpkin. My dwarves are looking strong now as I dominate each fight. I'm rolling to finish out my pumpkin composition. What I really want is the pumpkin triple, as well as more croc baits to utilize the plus 100 slot. I debate Kiss and Grumble to try for Doom Breath, Big Pigs, or Pumpkin, but decided against it. I'd rather start casting combat spells to finish this game out. After more rolls, I find my pumpkin and shock myself with Forbidden Fruit instead of running 6 units. The only treasure I want to replace Achilles with is double spells here, so I skip the treasure and await Miri's death. I freeze the chicken as I'm still Wonder Waddle and chickens are free economy for this hero. Freezing a chicken is worth 1 gold after tripling and skipping the treasure. With my positioning, I look to utilize the plus 100 slot as much as possible. Putting Croc there guarantees Croc, Pumpkin, and Pumpkin Spawn to have plus 200 attack. Then my Big Pig 5th gives it the best chance of spawning into that slot, given I still have a backline left. Then upgraded Pumpkin last ensures I can have the most upgraded summons after everything else dies. It still feels weird to have echoes in this late, but they're not too bad here actually. King Lion gets scarred, and I'm now down to the 1v1. When I last saw Horde Dragon, he had alt Dwarves, so this should be an easy finish, but you can't count out the potential of him tripling into Mirror Mirror. I gather my +1 gold chicken and look for a good combat spell or replacements for my Echo Woods. I find Pigamorph, which is the best spell for late game combats, then freeze the potion for a good chance at another good combat spell next turn. This fight turns out to be another cakewalk with no sign of him getting any stronger next turn. His comp is exactly where I would be had I not gone for Neon plus Treasure Map. The potion gives me another croc bait for yet another use of the +200 attack slot. With this positioning, around 6 or 7 units will be getting put into that +200 slot. This game was a great showcase of a unique way to transition out of the early game with no XP and still compete with others who have outscaled you. It's not too often I get to utilize Piggy Bank, but Princess White is definitely a good reason to choose this treasure. Neon plus Treasure Map is a very powerful endgame tool to give you late game transitions that wouldn't be possible otherwise. And as we watch this final fight, I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you learned something from this video. Let me know what you liked or disliked, and I hope to bring more gameplay content like this in the future.
When everything is down.